Lucas Jenkins was not someone people noticed much. He worked as a janitor at an old auto repair shop in Detroit called Black Auto Shop. The place wasn't fancy. It had cracked pavement outside, oil stains covering the garage floor, and tools scattered everywhere. Most days, Lucas cleaned up messes left by the mechanics, spilled oil, piles of metal scraps, and empty soda cans. People didn't pay attention to him because they thought he wasn't important, but Lucas didn't mind being invisible. In fact, he liked it that way. It gave him time to think and watch others work. Sometimes, when no one was looking, he'd pick up a wrench or screwdriver and tinker with broken parts lying around. He wasn't trained as a mechanic, but he had always been good with his hands. Fixing things came naturally to him, even if no one ever asked for his help. One evening, after most of the workers had gone home, Lucas overheard a loud argument near the back of the shop. A group of mechanics stood around something big covered by a dusty tarp. They were talking about some kind of engine, though none of them seemed happy about it. "That thing's junk," said Mike, the tallest mechanic. His arms were crossed, and he looked annoyed. "No one can fix it." "Yeah, well, maybe we should call whoever brought it here and tell them to take it away," added Carl, another mechanic. "We're not miracle workers." Mike shook his head. "Can't do that. The guy who dropped it off said it's worth a fortune. Something experimental, probably military. If we send it back now, we'll never get paid." Lucas, sweeping nearby, stopped what he was doing to listen more closely. He peeked out from behind a stack of tires just enough to see what was under the tarp. When Mike pulled it off, Lucas's eyes widened. The engine was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It was sleek and shiny, almost like chrome, but there were no screws or bolts holding it together. Instead, it looked like it had grown out of itself, with smooth curves and strange symbols etched into its surface. Tiny lights blinked faintly inside, even though it wasn't plugged in or turned on. "What makes you so sure it's unfixable?" asked Eddie, the youngest mechanic. He sounded curious, but also doubtful. Mike pointed at the engine. "Look at it, there aren't any manuals, no instructions, nothing. And trust me, we've tried everything, even called in a specialist last week. He couldn't figure it out either." The other mechanics nodded, agreeing with Mike. Then Carl laughed. "You know what? I bet even Lucas couldn't fix it." Everyone turned to look at Lucas, who froze mid-sweep. He hadn't expected to be noticed. For a moment he felt nervous, but then he straightened up and met their stares. "Why not?" he asked quietly. Carl smirked. "Come on, Lucas. You're a janitor, not a mechanic. What could you possibly know about engines?" Lucas didn't answer right away. He glanced back at the strange machine, feeling a spark of curiosity. Sure, he wasn't a trained mechanic, but he'd fixed plenty of things in his life. Radios, bicycles, lawnmowers. Maybe this engine wasn't so different. Besides, the challenge excited him. "I'll do it," Lucas said suddenly, surprising even himself. The room went silent. All the mechanics stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You serious?" Mike asked finally, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Lucas replied firmly. "Give me 3 days. If I don't fix it, I'll clean the whole shop myself for free." The men burst out laughing. 3 days? "Kid, it took us weeks just to figure out where to start," Carl said between chuckles. "But," Mike held up a hand, silencing the others. He studied Lucas for a moment, then shrugged. "Fine, 3 days. But don't blame us when you fail." With that, the mechanics left, leaving Lucas alone with the mysterious engine. Once they were gone, Lucas stepped closer to examine it. Up close, it was even stranger than he'd realized. The symbols on its surface seemed to shift slightly when he moved his head, and the humming sound it made, soft and steady, felt almost alive. Lucas grabbed a toolbox and began taking apart whatever pieces he could access. At first, progress was slow. Nothing fit together the way normal engines did. Some parts resisted his tools entirely, while others clicked open easily. By midnight, he was covered in grease and frustration, but he refused to give up. As he worked, memories flooded back to him. Growing up poor, he'd learned early on how to make do with what little he had. His dad used to say, "If you can dream it, you can build it." Those words stuck with Lucas through every tough moment. Now staring at the glowing engine, he wondered if his dad would be proud of him trying something so impossible. By morning, Lucas had made a small breakthrough. One section of the engine lit up briefly when he connected 2 wires. It wasn't much, but it gave him hope. Over the next 2 days, he kept pushing forward, ignoring hunger, fatigue, and the occasional teasing from the mechanics. Slowly, piece by piece, the engine started coming together. On the 3rd day, Lucas tightened the final bolt and stepped back. He flipped a switch he'd rigged himself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, the engine roared to life. Lights flashed brightly and the entire shop trembled slightly. Lucas grinned despite himself. Against all odds, he'd done it. When the mechanics arrived later that morning, they found Lucas standing beside the now functional engine, looking both exhausted and triumphant. Their jaws dropped in disbelief. "How?" Mike stammered, unable. To finish his sentence, Lucas simply shrugged. "Told you I could fix it." Little did anyone know this was only the beginning of something far greater and far stranger than any of them could imagine. The engine roared to life with a deep, steady hum that filled the entire shop. Tiny lights flickered across its surface, pulsing like stars in the night sky. Lucas stood back, his hands trembling slightly from exhaustion, but also excitement. He couldn't believe he'd actually done it. He'd fixed something no one else could. Mike, Carl, and Eddie stared at the engine as if they were seeing a ghost. None of them said anything for several moments. Finally, Mike broke the silence. This isn't possible," he muttered, shaking his head. "How did you even figure it out?" Lucas shrugged, trying to act casual even though he felt proud. "I just kept trying things until it worked. It wasn't that hard." "Not that hard?" Carl repeated, his voice rising. "Kid, this thing has been sitting here for months. Months. We've had experts look at it, and none of them could do what you just did." Eddie stepped closer to the engine, inspecting it carefully. His eyes widened when he noticed something unusual. "Wait a second," he said, pointing at the symbols etched into the metal. "These weren't glowing before, were they?" Everyone looked more closely. Sure enough, the strange markings on the engine now glowed faintly, shifting colors between blue, green, and purple. The patterns seemed to move, almost like they were alive. "What does that mean?" Lucas asked, feeling uneasy for the first time. "No idea," Mike admitted. "But whatever it is, it's not normal." As they stood there talking, something strange began happening around the shop. Small devices started acting up. A cell phone lying on a workbench buzzed loudly, then went completely dark. The radio in the corner switched itself on, playing static instead of music. Even the overhead lights flickered briefly before stabilizing again. "Did anyone touch the breaker?" Carl asked, looking around nervously. "Nope," Eddie replied. "Something's wrong. Really wrong." Lucas frowned. He didn't understand what was going on, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it was connected to the engine. After all, everything had been fine until he turned it on. Before anyone could figure out what to do next, a loud rumbling sound came from outside. At first it sounded like thunder, but it quickly grew louder and deeper. Everyone rushed to the garage door and pulled it open. What they saw made their jaws drop. A massive shadow loomed over the parking lot, blocking out the sun. It belonged to some kind of craft, smooth, sleek, and unlike any airplane or helicopter they'd ever seen. Its surface shimmered with colors that shifted constantly, making it hard to focus on. The shape was vaguely triangular, but the edges blurred as if they weren't entirely solid. The craft hovered silently above the ground, then slowly descended until it touched down gently on the pavement. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a section of the craft slid open, revealing a bright light inside. Figures emerged, 1, 2, 3 of them. They were tall and slender, with pale skin and large black eyes that reflected no emotion. No one moved. No one spoke. The air felt heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. One of the figures stepped forward, carrying a small device in its hand. It raised the device, and a mechanical voice spoke in perfect English. "We have detected the activation of our technology. Identify yourselves." Lucas froze. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. He glanced at the others, but they all looked just as terrified as he felt. Mike tried to speak, but his voice cracked. We're mechanics from Black Auto Shop." The alien tilted its head slightly, as if processing this information. "Mechanics? Explain how you repaired the core system." Now all eyes turned to Lucas. He swallowed hard, wishing he could disappear. I just fixed it," he stammered. "I didn't know it was yours. I didn't know it was alien or anything. I just thought it was broken." The alien studied him for a long moment, its expression unreadable. Then it nodded slowly. "Your actions are unexpected. Few species possess the ability to repair such advanced systems without guidance." Lucas didn't know whether to feel proud or scared. "Does that mean you're mad?" The alien paused before answering. "Mad? No. Curious, yes. Your species demonstrates potential beyond initial observations." While the aliens focused on Lucas, the other mechanics started whispering among themselves. "This can't be real," Carl whispered, his face pale. "Aliens? Seriously?" "Shut up," Mike hissed. "Do you want them to vaporize us or something?" Meanwhile, Lucas noticed something odd. The engine he'd repaired was still humming softly, and the glowing symbols on its surface seemed to match the shifting colors of the alien craft. Was it communicating with them somehow? The lead alien gestured toward the engine. "Retrieve the core system. We will depart shortly." Lucas hesitated. "Wait," he said, surprising himself with his own boldness. "Can I ask you something?" The alien tilted its head again. "Proceed." "Why leave? You came all this way. Why not stay and explain what this thing is? Or, I don't know, teach us more about it?" The alien's response was calm but firm. "Knowledge must be earned. Humanity is not yet ready for what we offer." Lucas wanted to argue, but he knew it wouldn't do any good. These beings were far beyond anything humans could comprehend. Still, he couldn't help feeling disappointed. What if this was the only chance humanity had to learn from them? As the aliens prepared to leave, one of them approached Lucas directly. It held out the small device it had been carrying earlier. "For your efforts," it said simply, placing the object in Lucas's hand. Then, without another word, the aliens returned to their craft. The hatch closed, and within seconds the ship lifted off the ground, disappearing into the sky as quickly as it had arrived. For a while no one spoke. The mechanics just stood there staring at the empty space where the craft had been. Finally, Carl broke the silence. "Okay, what just happened?" "I think we met aliens," Eddie replied, his voice trembling. Lucas looked down at the device in his hand. It was small, smooth, and warm to the touch. When he pressed a button on its side, a holographic image appeared. An intricate map of stars and planets. "Whatever this is," Lucas said quietly, "it's not over." The next morning, Lucas woke up feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. His body ached, his mind raced, and the alien device still sat on the coffee table where he'd left it. He stared at it for a long time, trying to process everything that had happened. The glowing map, the strange craft, the alien's cryptic warning, none of it made sense. But one thing was clear: his life would never be the same. Lucas decided not to tell anyone about the second encounter with the aliens. Not yet, anyway. He didn't want to scare his mom or make people think he was crazy. Instead, he focused on figuring out what the device could do. Every time he touched it, new symbols appeared on the holographic display. Some looked like star charts, while others resembled diagrams of machines or structures. It was like the device was teaching him something. But what? That afternoon, Lucas went back to work at the auto shop. The mechanics were buzzing with excitement, or maybe fear, about the aliens. Word had spread quickly around town, and reporters had started showing up outside the shop asking questions. Lucas kept his head down, pretending nothing unusual was happening. But deep inside, he felt different, special even, like he'd been chosen for something important. As the day wore on, Lucas noticed something strange. Whenever he carried the alien device in his pocket, small objects around him began behaving oddly. A wrench would float slightly off the ground before dropping back down. A radio would crackle with static even though it wasn't turned on. At first he thought he was imagining things, but when a stack of tires wobbled without anyone touching them, he realized the device was affecting its surroundings. "Hey, Lucas," Mike called from across the shop. "You okay over there? You've been staring at that toolbox for 5 minutes." Lucas snapped out of his thoughts. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking." Mike raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Everyone knew Lucas was quiet, so they didn't question his behavior too much. Still, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that the device was doing something to him. Maybe it was changing him somehow. Later that evening, after closing time, Lucas stayed behind to experiment. He locked the garage door and pulled the device out of his pocket. Holding it in both hands, he focused on the map. One of the blinking stars caught his eye. It was brighter than the others, pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Without thinking, he pressed his finger against it. Instantly, the room filled with light. The engine he'd repaired earlier, the one the aliens had taken, reappeared in the middle of the shop. It floated a few inches above the ground, spinning slowly as if powered by invisible forces. Tiny sparks danced across its surface, and the glowing symbols lit up brighter than ever. Lucas stumbled backward, nearly dropping the device. "What the—" Before he could react, the engine stopped moving and settled onto the floor with a soft thud. The lights dimmed, leaving only the faint hum of energy. Cautiously, Lucas approached it. The engine looked exactly the same as before, except now it seemed more alive, more aware. He reached out to touch it, but just as his fingers brushed the surface, a voice echoed in his mind, not spoken aloud, but clear as day. "Do not fear. We are connected." Lucas yanked his hand back, heart pounding. "Who's there?" he whispered, looking around the empty shop. No one answered. The voice was gone as quickly as it had come. Shaking, Lucas stepped away from the engine. Whatever was happening, he knew it was beyond his understanding. And yet, part of him wanted to keep going, to see how far this connection could take him. The stranger, the next day, Lucas noticed a man standing outside the shop. He was tall, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through everything. Unlike the curious reporters who had been hanging around, this man didn't look friendly. He wore a dark suit and sunglasses despite the cloudy weather. When Lucas walked outside during his lunch break, the man approached him. "Lucas Jenkins?" he asked, his tone calm but firm. Lucas nodded cautiously. "Yeah, who's asking?" "My name is Agent Harris," the man said, flashing a badge. "I'm with a government agency. We need to talk." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. "About what?" "About the incident last week. The visitors." Agent Harris glanced around, lowering his voice. "And about the device they gave you." "How do you know about that?" Lucas asked, gripping the device tightly in his pocket. Harris smirked. "We have our ways. Look, son, I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to understand what's going on. That device, it's dangerous. You don't know what it's capable of." Lucas hesitated. Part of him wanted to trust Harris, but something about the man felt off. "I'm handling it," he said finally. "It's none of your business." Harris frowned. "Be careful, Lucas. Things like that, they attract attention, bad attention." With that, the agent turned and walked away, leaving Lucas standing there confused and uneasy. What did Harris mean by bad attention? Was someone watching him? Following him? Learning the truth back at home, Lucas decided to test the device again. This time, he brought it to his bedroom and closed the door. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, he activated the hologram and studied the map carefully. One of the lines connecting the stars glowed brighter than the rest, forming a path. Intrigued, Lucas followed the line with his finger until it led to a specific location, a spot marked with a symbol that looked like a spiral. Suddenly, the device vibrated in his hand. Images flashed across the hologram. Buildings floating in. The sky, creatures made of light, cities built on water. It was beautiful and terrifying. Lucas realized these weren't just random pictures. They were glimpses of other worlds, worlds the aliens wanted him to see. Then another image appeared, a massive structure shaped like a pyramid. It pulsed with energy, radiating power. Beneath it, words formed in plain English. The Nexus, key to all knowledge. Lucas stared at the words, his heart racing. What was this Nexus? Why was it showing him this? And why did it feel like the device was urging him to find it? Over the next few days, Lucas became obsessed. He spent every free moment studying the map and experimenting with the device. Slowly, he began to understand how it worked. By focusing on certain symbols, he could manipulate nearby objects, moving tools across the room, turning lights on and off, even repairing broken machines with a single touch. But the more he used the device, the stronger the connection grew. Sometimes, he heard whispers in his mind, faint voices speaking in languages he didn't recognize. Other times, he saw flashes of visions, planets exploding, civilizations rising and falling, endless stretches of space. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. For the first time in his life, Lucas felt like he belonged somewhere, like he had a purpose. A warning one night, as Lucas lay in bed holding the device, the whispers grew louder. They coalesced into a single voice, one he recognized from the engine. "You must prepare," it said. "The Nexus awaits, but danger lies ahead." "What kind of danger?" Lucas asked aloud. The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it showed him a vision, shadowy figures chasing him through a dark forest, weapons firing beams of light. In the distance, the pyramid-shaped Nexus loomed, glowing brightly. Somehow, Lucas knew he had to reach it before the figures caught him. When the vision faded, Lucas sat up, breathing heavily. Was this real, or just his imagination? Either way, he couldn't ignore it. Something big was coming, something that would change everything. The next morning, Lucas packed a bag with essentials: food, water, clothes, and the device. He left a note for his mom saying he needed some time to figure things out. Then, following the map, he set off toward the unknown. Little did he know, he wasn't alone. As he drove away from Detroit, a black car trailed silently behind him, its driver hidden behind tinted windows. Lucas drove for hours, following the glowing map projected by the alien device. The road stretched endlessly ahead of him, lined with trees and empty fields. Occasionally he passed small towns, but he didn't stop. Something inside him told him to keep moving, to trust the device and follow wherever it led. The further he traveled, the more the world around him seemed to change. At first it was subtle, strange lights flickering in the distance, animals behaving oddly, or an eerie silence that hung in the air. But as night fell, the changes became harder to ignore. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. The stars above shimmered unnaturally, shifting colors like the alien craft he'd seen before. Even the wind carried whispers that sounded almost like words. Lucas gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to stay calm. He knew this journey wasn't going to be easy. The visions he'd seen, the shadowy figures chasing him, the glowing pyramid called the Nexus, they were all part of something bigger, something dangerous. But he couldn't turn back now. Not after everything that had happened. Arrival at the forest by midnight, Lucas reached the edge of a dense forest. The map on the device pointed directly into the trees, marking the entrance to some kind of path. He parked his car on the side of the road and stepped out, shivering in the cold night air. Pulling his jacket tighter around himself, he grabbed the bag of supplies from the trunk and started walking. The forest was dark and quiet, except for the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional rustle of branches overhead. Lucas switched on a flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. The map floated in front of him, guiding his steps. Each time he hesitated, the device vibrated gently, urging him forward. As he ventured deeper into the woods, the atmosphere grew heavier. It felt like the trees themselves were watching him, their twisted shapes looming closer with every step. Strange symbols began appearing on the trunks, etched into the bark in glowing lines that matched the ones on the engine and the device. They pulsed faintly, lighting up the path ahead. Lucas stopped to examine one of the symbols. When he touched it, a surge of energy shot through his hand. Images flashed in his mind. Ancient rituals, towering structures, and skies filled with alien ships. He staggered back, clutching his head. Whatever these symbols meant, they held immense power. The shadow figures, after what felt like hours, Lucas, finally reached a clearing. In the center stood a massive stone archway covered in more glowing symbols. Beyond it, the ground sloped downward into a deep ravine, where the air shimmered like heat waves rising off asphalt. The map on the device indicated that the nexus lay beyond the archway. Before Lucas could step through, a low growl echoed from the trees behind him. He spun around, heart racing, and saw movement in the shadows. Slowly, figures emerged, tall humanoid shapes cloaked in darkness. Their eyes glowed red, and their hands ended in sharp claws. They moved silently, surrounding him without making a sound. Lucas backed toward the archway, clutching the device tightly. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice trembling. One of the figures stepped forward, its face hidden beneath a hood. "You do not belong here," it said in a raspy voice. "Turn back while you still can." "I'm not leaving," Lucas replied, surprising himself with his own bravery. "I have to find the nexus." The figure tilted its head, as if studying him. Then, without warning, it lunged at him, claws extended. Lucas instinctively raised the device, which emitted a bright flash of light. The figure recoiled, hissing in pain, and the others hesitated. Seizing the moment, Lucas dashed through the archway. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the air changed. It was warmer, charged with energy, and the ground beneath his feet felt smooth and metallic rather than rough and uneven. Behind him, the shadow figures stopped at the edge of the archway, unable to follow. They snarled and clawed at the air before retreating into the forest. Lucas let out a shaky breath, realizing he'd made it past them. For now. But he knew the danger wasn't over. This place, wherever it was far from safe. The nexus following the map, Lucas descended into the ravine. The shimmering air thickened, distorting his surroundings like a mirage. After a few minutes, he reached the bottom and found himself standing in front of the pyramid-shaped structure he'd seen in his vision. It towered above him, its surface covered in glowing patterns that shifted constantly. A soft hum emanated from within, vibrating through his chest. Lucas approached cautiously, holding the device out in front of him. The nexus seemed to recognize it. The patterns on the pyramid aligned perfectly with those on the device, creating a pulsing rhythm that resonated through the entire area. A voice spoke in his mind, louder and clearer than before. "Welcome, Seeker. You have proven yourself worthy." "Worthy of what?" Lucas asked aloud. "Of knowledge, of power, of understanding your place in the universe." Lucas swallowed hard. "What happens if I accept?" "You will gain access to truths beyond imagination. But beware, such power comes with responsibility. Use it wisely or risk losing yourself." Before Lucas could respond, the pyramid split open, revealing a chamber inside. Light poured out, illuminating the entire ravine. Without hesitation, Lucas stepped inside. The chamber was vast, filled with floating platforms and holographic displays. Each display showed a different scene. Planets spinning in space, civilizations thriving and collapsing, timelines stretching infinitely into the future. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, atop which rested a crystal orb glowing with intense energy. Lucas walked toward the pedestal, drawn to the orb like a magnet. When he touched it, a flood of information rushed into his mind. He saw the history of the universe, the birth of stars, the rise of intelligent life, the creation of advanced technologies. He learned about the aliens who had visited Earth, their mission to observe humanity, and their belief that humans had untapped potential. But he also saw warnings. Dark forces existed in the universe, seeking to control or destroy anything weaker than themselves. The shadow figures in the forest were just one example. Humanity's survival depended on unlocking its full potential, and Lucas was now a key part of that process. A choice. When the visions subsided, Lucas found himself kneeling on the floor, overwhelmed but exhilarated. The device in his hand had transformed. It was now fused with the crystal orb, glowing brighter than ever. He could feel its power coursing through him, enhancing his senses and abilities. A new voice spoke, this time aloud. "You have been chosen, Lucas Jenkins. Will you embrace your destiny?" He looked up to see one of the aliens from the auto shop standing before him. Its expression was unreadable, but its tone was serious. "This is only the beginning. The road ahead will be difficult, but your actions will shape the future of your species." Lucas stood slowly, gripping the device tightly. "What do I need to do?" The alien gestured toward the exit. "Return to your world. Share what you have learned, but be cautious. Not everyone will understand. Some will fear you. Others will seek to exploit your power." With that, the alien vanished, leaving Lucas alone in the chamber. For a moment, he considered staying, exploring the endless knowledge contained within the Nexus. But then he remembered his mom, his friends, and everyone else back home. They needed him. Taking a deep breath, Lucas turned and walked out of the pyramid. As he stepped back into the ravine, he noticed the shadow figures waiting outside the archway. They hadn't given up. Lucas raised the device, feeling its energy surge through him. This time he wasn't afraid, he was ready. Lucas stood at the edge of the ravine, the glowing device in his hand pulsing with energy. The shadow figures waited silently outside the archway, their red eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. They didn't attack immediately, but Lucas could feel their presence pressing against him, heavy and menacing. He took a step forward, clutching the device tightly. Its warmth spread through his body, calming his nerves and sharpening his senses. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't ordinary. They weren't human or even fully physical. But neither was the power he now held. One of the shadow figures stepped closer, its claws gleaming faintly in the dim light. "You cannot escape," it rasped, its voice echoing unnaturally. "The Nexus is forbidden." Lucas shook his head. "I'm not running, and I'm not afraid of you." With that, he raised the device and focused on the symbols glowing across its surface. Instantly, a beam of light shot out, striking the figure directly. It let out an ear-splitting screech as its form dissolved into smoke, vanishing completely. The other figures hesitated for a moment, then lunged at him all at once. Lucas swung the device around, creating a barrier of light that pushed them back. Each time one of them tried to get close, the device reacted, emitting bursts of energy that forced them to retreat. But there were too many of them. No matter how hard he fought, they kept coming, surrounding him from all sides. Sweat dripped down his face as exhaustion began to set in. He couldn't keep this up forever. A new ally just when Lucas thought he couldn't hold on any longer. A loud roar echoed through the ravine. A massive creature emerged from the shadows, a sleek silver being with 4 legs and glowing blue eyes. It moved gracefully, almost like liquid metal, and radiated an aura of strength and intelligence. The shadow figures froze, their attention shifting to the newcomer. For a moment, everything was still. Then, without warning, the creature charged at the figures, swiping at them with razor-sharp claws made of pure energy. One by one, the figures disintegrated under its attacks, their screams fading into silence. When the last figure disappeared, the creature turned to Lucas. Its gaze was piercing but not hostile. Slowly, it approached him, lowering its head in what seemed like a gesture of respect. What are you?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling. The creature didn't speak, but images flashed in Lucas's mind. Memories of distant planets, battles fought long ago, and a bond between humans and alien races. Somehow, he understood. This creature had been sent by the aliens who built the Nexus. It was here to protect him. Lucas nodded slowly. "Thank you." The creature let out a low growl, then stepped aside, clearing a path toward the archway. Together they walked back through the forest, the creature keeping watch while Lucas clutched the device tightly. By the time they reached his car, The first rays of sunlight were breaking over the horizon. Returning home, Lucas drove back to Detroit with the creature following silently behind him. People stared as the metallic being moved effortlessly alongside his car, blending into the background whenever someone got too close. When they finally arrived at his apartment building, Lucas parked and stepped out, motioning for the creature to stay hidden. Inside, he found his mom sitting at the kitchen table sipping coffee. She looked up when he entered, her eyes widening in surprise. "Lucas, where have you been? I've been so worried." "I'm sorry, Mom," he said softly, setting his bag down. "I had to go somewhere important." Maria studied him carefully, noticing the new confidence in his posture and the strange glow emanating from the device in his hand. "What happened to you?" Lucas hesitated, unsure how much to tell her. Finally, he decided to be honest, at least partially. "Something incredible, Mom. Something that's going to change everything." Before she could ask more questions, the creature appeared in the doorway, its sleek form shimmering faintly. Maria gasped, nearly dropping her mug. "What is that?" "It's a friend," Lucas explained. "It's here to help me." Maria stared at the creature for a long moment, then shook her head. "This is getting too weird for me. But if it's helping you, I guess I can live with it." Lucas smiled, grateful for her trust. "Thanks, Mom. You won't regret it." Sharing the knowledge over the next few days, Lucas began experimenting with the device's newfound abilities. He discovered that it could do far more than manipulate objects or fight off enemies. It could heal injuries, repair machines instantly, and even communicate with people telepathically. Every time he used it, he felt a deeper connection to the universe, as if he were tapping into something vast and ancient. But Lucas knew he couldn't keep this power to himself. Humanity needed to understand its potential, not just to survive, but to thrive. So he started small, reaching out to those he trusted most. First, he called Kevin, his childhood friend. Kevin had always been curious about science and technology, and Lucas hoped he could help explain some of the things he'd learned. They met at a quiet park where Lucas showed him the device and demonstrated its capabilities. Kevin's jaw dropped as he watched a broken phone repair itself and a pile of leaves levitate into the air. "This is insane," Kevin whispered, shaking his head. "Do you realize what this means? This could change the world." "That's why I need your help," Lucas replied. "We have to figure out how to use this responsibly. If the wrong people find out—" Kevin nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Count me in." Next, Lucas reached out to Mike and the other mechanics from the auto shop. At first, they were skeptical, even after everything they'd seen. But when Lucas showed them what the device could do, they were amazed. Together, they brainstormed ways to apply its power to everyday problems, from fixing cars to generating clean energy. Word spread quickly, and soon others began approaching Lucas with ideas. Scientists, engineers, and inventors all wanted to learn more about the device and its connection to the Nexus. Lucas welcomed their curiosity, knowing that humanity's future depended on collaboration. Facing resistance. Not everyone was supportive. However, Agent Harris, the man in the dark suit, showed up unannounced one evening, demanding answers. He claimed to represent a government agency tasked with protecting Earth from extraterrestrial threats. But Lucas wasn't fooled. There was something cold and calculating about Harris, something that made him uneasy. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Harris said, pacing back and forth. "That thing in your hand, it's dangerous. It could destroy us all." "No," Lucas replied firmly. "It's not dangerous, unless we make it dangerous. This isn't about destruction. It's about creation, about learning and growing." Harris frowned, clearly frustrated. "You're making a mistake, Lucas. Mark my words, this will end badly." With that, he stormed out, leaving Lucas and the creature alone. Lucas sighed, knowing Harris wouldn't give up easily. But he refused to let fear dictate his actions. He'd come too far to turn back now. Preparing for what's next as weeks passed, Lucas continued sharing the knowledge he'd gained from the Nexus. He organized meetings, workshops, and experiments, encouraging people to think creatively and work together. Slowly but surely, a community began to form, a group of individuals united by a shared vision of progress and discovery. But Lucas also prepared for the challenges ahead. The shadow figures might have been defeated, but he knew they were only the beginning. Greater threats loomed in the universe, forces that would test humanity's resolve and ingenuity. One night, as he stood on the roof of his apartment building, staring up at the stars, the creature joined him. It let out a soft growl, nudging him gently with its head. "We'll be ready," Lucas said quietly, gripping the device. "No matter what comes next." And for the first time in his life, he truly believed it. Months had passed since Lucas first touched the alien device, and his life had changed completely. What started as a quiet existence as a janitor at Black Auto Shop had transformed into something extraordinary. He was no longer just Lucas Jenkins. He was a leader, a teacher, and a symbol of hope for humanity's future. The community he'd built grew stronger every day. Scientists, engineers, artists, and dreamers from all over the world came together, united by the knowledge shared through the Nexus. They called themselves the Dawn Collective, inspired by the idea that humanity was entering a new era, an age of discovery and progress. Under Lucas's guidance, they worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of the device and apply its power to solve real-world problems. Clean energy systems powered entire cities without pollution. Broken machines repaired themselves instantly, eliminating waste. Diseases once thought incurable vanished thanks to advanced healing techniques learned from the Nexus. People began to see the universe differently, not as something to fear, but as something to explore and understand. But with great progress came great challenges. Not everyone welcomed the changes brought by the Dawn Collective. Governments and corporations feared losing control. Conspiracy theories spread online, claiming that Lucas and his group were working with aliens to take over the planet. Some even accused them of being dangerous extremists. Agent Harris returned frequently, trying to convince Lucas to hand over the device. Each time, Lucas refused. "This isn't yours to take," he would say calmly. "It belongs to everyone." Harris didn't give up easily. His visits became more aggressive, his warnings darker. "You're playing with forces you don't fully understand," he said during one tense meeting. "Sooner or later, someone will come for it, and when they do, you won't be able to stop them." Lucas didn't argue. He already knew the truth. Danger was coming. The shadow figures may have been defeated, but they were only the beginning. Greater threats loomed beyond Earth's atmosphere, forces that viewed humanity as weak and unworthy. A warning from the stars one night, while experimenting with the device, Lucas received a message. It wasn't spoken aloud or shown as an image. It was a feeling, a deep sense of urgency that pulsed through him. The device glowed brighter than ever, projecting a holographic map of the solar system. A red dot blinked near Jupiter, moving steadily toward Earth. Lucas called an emergency meeting with the Dawn Collective. When everyone gathered, he explained what he'd seen. "Something's coming," he said, pointing at the map. "It's big. Bigger than anything we've faced before." Kevin frowned, studying the projection. "What is it? Another alien ship?" "I don't know," Lucas admitted. "But it feels hostile." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. For the first time, doubt crept into their minds. Could humanity really stand against such a threat, or had they been foolish to think they could handle this kind of power? "We need to prepare," Maria said finally, breaking the silence. She had become a key member of the collective, offering wisdom and support whenever needed. "If we work, together we can face whatever comes our way." Lucas nodded. "We'll use everything we've learned from the Nexus. Every skill, every tool, every idea. We won't fight alone. We'll fight as one." Building the defense over the next few weeks, the Dawn Collective worked around the clock to strengthen Earth's defenses. Using the device, they created advanced technology unlike anything the world had ever seen. Shield generators protected major cities. Drones equipped with energy weapons patrolled the skies. Communication networks allowed people to stay connected, no matter where they were. The creature, the sleek silver being sent by the aliens, played a crucial role in their efforts. It acted as both a guardian and a guide, teaching them how to harness the device's full potential. Its presence reassured everyone, reminding them that they weren't truly alone in this fight. Meanwhile, Lucas focused on training others to use the device. At first, only a handful of people could access its power, but as time went on, more individuals began to awaken latent abilities within themselves. Telepathy, telekinesis, enhanced strength. These gifts emerged naturally as if humanity had always carried them but never realized it. Why now? Kevin asked one evening, watching as a young woman lifted a car off the ground with her mind. Why are these powers showing up all of a sudden? Lucas smiled faintly. Because we're ready. The Nexus chose us for a reason. It saw something in us, something worth believing in. The arrival finally, the day came. The red dot on the map reached Earth's orbit, and the skies above filled with light. A massive alien vessel descended slowly, its surface shimmering with colors that defied description. Unlike the sleek craft Lucas had encountered before, this ship was enormous, dwarfing even the largest human-made structures. It hovered silently, casting a shadow over the land below. People panicked, cities emptied as millions fled in fear. But the members of the Dawn Collective stood firm, gathering at a central location outside Detroit. There, surrounded by their creations and armed with courage, they prepared to face the unknown. When the ship opened, a delegation of beings emerged. They were unlike any aliens Lucas had seen before, tall, armored, and radiating authority. Their leader stepped forward, speaking in a voice that resonated like thunder. "We are the Arbiters. Your species has trespassed upon sacred ground. You will surrender the Nexus or face annihilation." Lucas stepped forward, holding the device tightly. "We didn't ask for this," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "But we won't give it up. The Nexus showed us who we are and who we can become. We're not afraid of you." The Arbiter tilted its head, studying him closely. Then, without warning, it raised a hand, and beams of energy shot toward the group. The shields held firm, deflecting the attack, but the impact shook the ground beneath their feet. The battle began, humanity's triumph. For hours, the two sides clashed. The Arbiters unleashed devastating weapons, but the Dawn Collective fought, back with ingenuity and determination. Energy blasts collided with force fields. Drones zipped through the air, targeting enemy ships. People used their newfound abilities to protect each other, working together seamlessly. At the heart of it all was Lucas. With the device glowing brightly in his hands, he coordinated the defense, guiding his allies and channeling the Nexus's power. When the Arbiters launched their final assault, a massive wave of energy aimed directly at the group. Lucas raised the device high above his head. A blinding flash erupted, engulfing the battlefield. When the light faded, the alien ship was gone, retreating into the depths of space. Silence fell as the survivors looked around in awe. Against all odds, they had won. A new beginning. In the days that followed, the world began to heal. The Dawn Collective continued their work, using the Nexus's knowledge to rebuild and improve. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy shifted. They were no longer seen as primitive or weak. Other civilizations took notice, reaching out to form alliances and share ideas. Lucas stood on a hill overlooking the city one evening, watching as lights twinkled in the distance. The creature sat beside him, its blue eyes reflecting the stars above. "What happens now?" Kevin asked, joining them. Lucas smiled. "Now, we keep going. We've only scratched the surface of what's possible. There's so much more to learn, so much more to build." As he spoke, the device in his hand pulsed softly, as if agreeing. Lucas felt a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for everyone who had stood together. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, and this was only the beginning.